Thanks for having me here today. And I'm personally thrilled about the topic that you've all chosen, healing, because really there's nothing more important. And where healing really takes place, of course, is in the mind, at the level of cause, because it's the mind that's creating havoc at the level of form. So yes, you can absolutely heal at the level of form, and quite often it's completely appropriate to heal at the level of form if there are things in the body, in the world, in your relationships that are creating you so much difficulty that they're pulling focus from your ability to concentrate on healing where healing really occurs. So there's absolutely no shame in going to the doctor or the energy healer or the nutritionist or the chiropractor or the marriage therapist or whatever the situation is that you feel requires healing in form. As long as you realize that that's just effect. It's not really taking care of anything at the root. So, I want to talk about the root. So, healing at the level of the mind. It's so incredibly easy. And we make it so unbelievably hard by listening to the ego interpretations of why it's so incredibly hard. I will tell you really only about my own experience, because that's all I'm qualified to do here. I would hear great wisdom teachers talking about the Course or talking about their own forms of awakening or enlightenment that they've reached through whatever their own practices are. And they would describe the truth of all that is. They would describe the truth of God and what love actually is. And it sounds incredibly distasteful to an ego mind. It sounds threatening and irritating, and it doesn't sound like there can possibly be anything in it for me, for you. So we say we want it, but when faced with the idea of actually having to have a complete bonded love relationship with God in which you experience the truth of love, nobody is ready to really take that step. At least I wasn't. So there are some very specific things that I want to talk about today, because I know actually that this isn't just me, because in the Power of Power retreat workshops that I would do with Nook Sanchez, we would do these exercises with the room, and we would say, if you found out in this very moment that you had to surrender all areas of your life to God, what sort of emotions would that bring up in you? And everybody was afraid. Everybody imagined that, oh, if I had to turn over my career and my finances to God, the next thing you know, I'm going to be unemployed and homeless and not knowing where my next meal is coming from, or God is going to tell me to go to some third world country and be good to starving children, and that's going to feel like sacrifice to me because I love my condo with its air conditioning. So that is the way the mind thinks, the ego mind thinks. And it thinks that way on every one of these topics. When you are told that special relationships are junk food that don't give you anything you really, really want, you say, okay, but I'm not ready for a holy relationship in which really the love affair is with God, the love affair is with everything and everyone. You say, bleh, I don't want that. I don't feel like I can get the juice that I need from that kind of love. So it doesn't sound delicious to me. And that's true of every area of life that we think we have a grip on, that because we are taking the advice of our own thinking mind, the ego mind, we think that career is important and money is important, but when you look at that, it's like, what is it exactly that I'm trying to get from money or from increased status in my job or in the world? And invariably, if you go right down to the bottom of it, what I'm really looking for out of money is safety and comfort and the peace of knowing that I know where my next meal is coming from. And I'm maybe looking for self-esteem. I'm looking for a sense of fulfillment or satisfaction or respect. Well, we're not actually getting any of those things from chasing money or chasing a bigger, better career. Because if you've ever noticed that when you get that promotion finally, or when you get that windfall amount of money, and you might think, aha, now I will feel safe. Now I will feel respected by my peers. Do you? I'm not the first one to say money doesn't buy happiness. That's not a new concept. Whenever we get the things that we crave, because we think they're going to complete us, the love of one's life, the soulmate, it may appear to do it for about 10 minutes, but ultimately that's not really happening because it can't happen externally. It cannot be provided to us by the world. None of this stuff actually exists in the world. The only thing that exists in the world are the sort of ego substitutes for all of these things which only exist in truth in God. So the problem for me, the most giant roadblock for me, was the fact that the truth of God can't really be brought into this world. And divine love can't really be brought into this world because this world is nothing. It does not exist. It's complete fantasy. So when you bring reality into complete fantasy, what happens? Fantasy melts. They can't mesh. You can't have your regular life the way you live it through your ego understanding and expect to weave divine love into that. It can't be done. So to have to choose sounds terrifying. It sounds like a leap of faith that, to me, that I absolutely wasn't willing to make, because my mind, which was trying to interpret divine love and the truth of God, which of course can't be interpreted by an ego mind, in the absence of being able to interpret it through an ego mind, the ego is so happy to give you its own interpretations of it, saying, you will get no satisfaction ever again. This will be the biggest kind of sacrifice you could ever imagine. You will be unhappy forever. There is no juice in this. So you and I, who all we want is like pie with ice cream, that to me is a nutshell description of what we're after in the world. And to us, when we're looking for the pie and ice cream, the truth of God feels like cabbage that's been boiling for 2 hours without salt. So it kind of smells bad, and it's limp, and it's colorless, and it tastes like nothing. That's what these things appear to be when you're looking at them through an ego mind. So the leap of trust from believing the ego's interpretation to, even though I have no firsthand proof that everything I could ever want and a million times more are in God, I'm going to set aside what my ego says just for a minute, just for a day, and I'm going to believe in this thing that the Course has been telling me, that great sages on YouTube have been telling me for the longest time, that here in God is everything I crave. And I'm going to treat that as if it's real. And I'm just going to trust and see what happens. But in order to trust, I have to put aside everything I think is true about the world and me in the world. So none of my judgments can be real because they're all obstacles to truth. I'm just gonna lock those in the closet for now, maybe, hopefully forever, but for now. And I'm gonna trust that this thing that still looks like cabbage, boiled cabbage to me, because that's the thing, you can't assume you're gonna get to a place where it doesn't look like boiled cabbage, where it sort of looks like ice cream. It doesn't look like ice cream. You have to jump into the boiled cabbage. And if anyone here loves boiled cabbage, take a different analogy for yourself. It is a leap of faith. But after you've made that leap of faith, even if you've only made it a little bit, the kind of peace that I have never known became immediately apparent. Everything changes. Everything changes. And when that leap is made, after that, it just becomes a matter of practice and deepening trust more and releasing my belief in judgment and guilt more and more. You don't have to be perfect by any means, believe me, or awake by any means, in order to make that first leap of trust. And it feels like a huge gap, that leap, until you look back after you made it, and it's like the size of a flea, the leap that you have to make. And you'll go like, what was the big deal? That ability is in every person all the time to make that little flea-sized leap of trust and faith. And like the world starts over again when that shift has been made. So healing of the mind, wow, the sanity difference that comes from that, the profound ability to look back at all these things that the Course and other teachings talk about and to know how they can be true, that there's no more intellectualizing, there's no more, oh yeah, I totally get that. It goes so much deeper than that. And that's not to say that, I have it all wired in any way, at least not at this moment, but I get it. I get it like I never got it before. So if you are asking like, okay, what is that leap of truth and how do I make it? I have a favorite Course quote. It has been my favorite forever, so I must have known this without knowing it. In fact, I even used it as the ending of one of my books, and I thought I understood it then, but it tells you step by step by step exactly what must be done in order to make that little leap and to rest in God. And when you rest in God, that's when true peace becomes known and everything changes. And doorways open that you can continue to walk through to become a deeper and deeper version of yourself. The version that the Course is talking about you being, walking through the world with the Christ as you. That would be the end goal, so to speak. But it's telling you how to do it. And I knew what this quote meant, and I was excited by it, and I taught about this quote. Did I ever actually do the things that are in this quote? No, I did not. But my advice that I would give here today is that you take this quote, and I will read it to you because it's too long for me to memorize, and every sentence of it, make it your practice for like the next month, if you're interested. Every sentence of it, take it and do your best to actually do what it says. And I promise you, if you manage it, your life will never be the same. In a good way. In a pie and ice cream way. So I'm going to dig out my iPad and hope that I can read it in sunlight. Maybe we'll move into the shade. Okay, here it is. And you will recognize this quote, and your mind will go, oh, that one, I already know that one. Tell your mind to shut up. simply do this. Be still and lay aside all thoughts of what you are and what God is. All concepts you've learned about the world, all images you hold about yourself. Empty your mind of everything it thinks is either true or false, or good or bad, of every thought it judges worthy, and all the ideas of which it is ashamed. Hold on to nothing. That, my friends, is a lifetime practice. And there's 1,200 more pages to that book besides this. So you have a treasure of infinite worth in your library. If you start reading the lines like they're really true, there's just no imagining where it can take you. All right, so let's actually take this line by line and talk about it a little bit. It's pretty self-explanatory, but you never know. Be still, which is very self-explanatory. You're going to have to. It does not mean you have to empty your mind of thought. It just means come to rest and lay aside all thoughts of what you are and what God is. So any self-concept you've got going on, it does not have to be, in fact, it's best if it's not anything intellectual. Don't pull in what you feel you have already learned about the Course. In fact, a part of this quote that goes on after this tells you to leave everything behind, including the Course. So you have to go with truly empty hands when you ask to rest in God, because truly you do not know anything. I mean, I know you've heard that before. I heard it a million times and I went, yeah, I get it. I don't know anything. You know what taught me that I really, really don't know anything? Just recently, I had an experience where I was asking to know, like, give me something. I need to know how God perceives. And I know that perception is the wrong word, but it's like, let me see something through your eyes. I suppose I was looking for some kind of help in trusting, or some kind of help in giving up my addiction to my ego way of seeing things. And what happened was that I was suddenly in the presence of something massively big, an entity of some kind, and I knew that I ought to recognize this entity because it seemed somehow intensely familiar, and it was vast, but it was also completely benign. There was nothing in its size to be afraid of, and beyond being benign, it was saturated in or made out of God. So it had a perfect sweetness and innocence about it, and I couldn't think who this was, and I was racking my brain, and all of a sudden I realized I was in the presence of Satan as perceived through the eyes of God. In other words, through a completely sane mind. So it wasn't my mind that I was perceiving, I was being shown the experience of perceiving through a perfectly spotless mind. And I don't know which part of it blew my mind more. The fact that, wow, am I ever wrong about everything if Satan is spotlessly innocent and pure, which in fact that was my first-hand experience of what Satan was, because this was first-hand experience that I was getting. But equally stunning was being able to experience what a perfectly clear, sane mind of love sees. Excuse me. Kamikaze bug. So that helped me know for sure how utterly wrong I am. Any conclusion that I have ever come to about anything is made up of a million equally wrong semi-conscious assumptions based on my own past or cultural crap that I've decided is true collectively along with everyone else. Nothing of this is true. Nothing. So when you are asked to lay aside all thoughts of what you are and what God is, oh my God, you should do that. That is my advice to you. You should do that, because everything you think you know, including everything you've ever read or anything you've ever studied, is wrong. Just going to cut to the chase. Save yourself time. You're wrong. You'll thank yourself for it later. So all concepts you've learned about the world, same thing. Everything you've learned, the very function of learning is wrong. It's wrong. When you compare it to the changeless purity of an entirely loving, completely sane mind, you can't throw it away fast enough. It has no value. And the things that you have chased after in this world in an attempt to complete yourself, to feel better about your life, because they've all been based on wrongness. That's why they don't go anywhere. Oh my God, this is so worth doing. Work as hard as you can, if you take my advice, to get to know God, to become familiar enough and to feel safe enough and trusting enough that you can rest in God and let your world be reinterpreted for you. That is one of those things that sounded like the boiled cabbage to me before, like a huge loss of independence. Now it's like it's a privilege that I'm really, really grateful for. Please reinterpret more and more and more. I'm going to find more ways to trust even more deeply, so that more and more of my diseased ravings can be healed for good, and all joy, and all satisfaction, and all self-worth, and all richness, and all abundance, and all love. That's where it comes from, and it is not dependent on the promotion or the relationship or whether your kid did that thing you wanted them to do. Yeah. So all of this really is saying the same thing. All images you hold about yourself, because you're wrong about yourself, you have to be willing not even to find yourself innocent if you're incapable of doing that, but you have to be willing to set aside those damning thoughts and feelings you've always had about yourself. And for me, this is where the Satan thing came in really handy, because anytime there was something about me or something about anybody else that I thought was really guilty, I'd go, yeah, but, if Satan is innocent, probably that thing about me that I hate, it's probably innocent too. So, every thought, all images you hold about yourself, empty your mind of everything it thinks is either true or false, because your mind is wrong about what's true or false or good or bad. Every thought that your mind judges worthy, your mind has its head up its ass, frankly. And all the ideas of which it is ashamed. So everything that your mind latches onto as being valuable isn't. And again, we're talking about ego mind. And everything that your mind thinks it should be ashamed of, you should be ashamed of. The big guilt that we all share for doing what we thought we did to God. Leave it behind. So it's unusual for me to get in front of a camera and recommend things to other people, because I'm usually pretty clear that all I want to do is give you my own experience, and then you go off and do as you choose. And I will say that again, only if you're inspired, take this and work with it. But wow, it's the peace I've always craved. And I know that I'm only a fingernail width of the way in. I know, or I believe I know, I'm wrong, but I have the sense that there is so much more that I have not yet experienced here. I'm just beginning. I really am. And it's already everything I ever wanted. And the decision, that little leap of trust and faith, it's no big deal. So I do hope you'll be inspired to go there in your own time. And that's that. I don't know if we're at a half an hour yet or not, frankly, but I've said what I need to say, and if we're still short, I will just show you some magnificent pictures of the English countryside, because I think I've done all the teaching that any of us needs for one day. I love you, and good luck.